So we're looking at a daytime rollover crash. Beautiful day in Florida. When do you think the police suspect that it could be a DUI situation?
I'd say they probably at this point have already established that this is a DUI investigation because Tiger's in the back of one of the patrol cars, which we'll see in a little bit here.
Hi, how are you?
What they're doing right
Are you the
now is I'm
driver
going
of
to
the
pause it real
SUV?
quick. Is they're conducting the crash investigation.
Okay.
Um, Simultaneous to that, this officer here, who is the DUI officer, is gathering information from witnesses. So what we call this person here is the wheel
Oh,
witness,
okay. Can you tell me what
the
happened?
person that witnessed the accident. So the state of
Okay.
Florida needs to establish that he was going to drive the vehicle. Clearly, when the police arrive on scene,
Okay.
Oh, that's the
he's
wheel
not.
witness. She was at
Yes.
the wheel.
And you had
And
your
he's not
still
in the car
on?
when they arrive on
Okay, so
scene,
you
so they
weren't
don't know who was
completely
driving.
stopped. You were still
Do you
moving?
think Tiger's notoriety as someone who had been convicted of DUI previously or charged with DUI previously, does that raise the senses of the police to perhaps this could be another DUI?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they may not admit that on these body cams, but they're probably immediately saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, there's admissibility issues in court with propensity evidence and things like that, but their probably senses are heightened.
So the passenger door?
What the officer's doing here is she's
Okay.
asking, what did he see? What happened? Who did you see get out of the vehicle? You'll see here in a moment that he points towards an
Can you
SUV
describe the
that they
driver?
have Tiger in. And they're establishing here
What he
a
was
wheel
wearing, how
witness so that they can
visible?
prove that Tiger Woods was operating the vehicle.
Or if you could point him out to me. He's okay. In the black SUV? Okay.
Your cases ever fall apart for that
Okay, and
reason?
he was the
They
only one in
can
That
the
a wheel
vehicle?
witness is compromised in some way?
Compromised or they can't establish one. For example, single car wreck into a light pole. Um, Somebody's driving by, calls 911. When they show up, there's somebody standing around.
And the fact that it's Tiger Woods' Range Rover on its side with Tiger Woods sitting next to it would not be enough to.
In and of itself, they could try. There are certain cases like DUI manslaughters or even DUIs that have accidents where they can do, DNA evidence on the airbag, right? So they take DNA from the airbag. Obviously, the airbag only deploys because there's an accident.
Yeah.
So you circumstantially can say, hey, look, you were driving because your DNA is on the airbag. It only gets on that if you were behind the wheel at the time.
So all of this here?
What they're doing here is he's showing where
That damage
Tiger's vehicle made contact with his trailer. If we were standing behind the trailer,
And then your tire
what he
came
describes
off?
here in a moment is that,
Okay.
Tiger tried to swerve to avoid him slowing down to make a right. Tiger's passenger side kind of ramps up off the driver's
Do
side
you know if
trailer
he was, like,
portion,
driving
going,
behind you for a while?
airborne
Was he in
onto
that
the side.
Okay.
Yeah. Was he driving okay, or
Yeah.
how was he driving? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was just cruising along like normal.
Now, there was some notable
In here, and I thought he was going to be looking, but I guess
commentary
maybe he wasn't
about
looking.
And what were your observations?
Tiger's
of
driving here. One of the things he says is that
He seemed
he thought he was
okay.
driving okay,
Yeah.
the civilian.
Apologetic or
Because she asks him, was anything out of normal? And he's like, no, I seem to be driving okay.
Flustered, you know. I mean, it's something
Looks like a
he
residential
lives
street,
like that.
probably a lower speed limit, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think Tiger's house is right down the road. So Tiger lives on this road. In fact, he says, he being the civilian here, I know who he is. Like, I don't want to, be, he lives right down the road.
Leave me out of this.
You get that vibe, he almost feels bad that he's the one that got it.
Yeah.
Because it broke off a metal piece here, and the wheel well
And this is where he's showing kind of how Tiger's vehicle did end up on the side. One of the things she asks him is, how did he seem when he got out? And another thing that the witness says, he seemed okay. Now, as a defense attorney, you'd be saying, look, there's no evidence of impairment. You've got a civilian witness saying, driving okay, seemed okay, it's an accident. Stateside,
So that's an interesting question, though. So this officer is asking questions of this witness. There's another officer with Tiger in the squad car, correct?
I don't know if they're in the squad car, but there's something that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, which happens around the 16-minute mark. It's called switching hats. There are two simultaneous investigations going on. The first is the civil crash. Anything you say during a crash investigation cannot be used against you. You have an obligation by statute to stay on scene, report it to the officer.
Okay.
The switching of the hats is required under Florida law. If you don't switch hats and make it clear that we've shifted from a civil crash investigation to a criminal, then anything that takes place, any admissions that take place after that, can be tossed out.
What is that statement they have to make? Is it as simple as that?
It's yeah, I mean, there's no verbatim language, but it needs to be crystal clear. Like, we've just concluded our civil crash investigation. We are now switching to a criminal investigation
Yeah.
for DUI. That it has to be just clearly stated in some capacity like that, and then it becomes
And presumably the police are so comfortable with that they don't miss that one.
usually they don't. I have seen personally cases where they do. They, whether it's a new officer or they just forget, just a routine thing,
Is this Gideon?
and at that point,
Yeah.
anything that is admitted to after can be thrown out because you could argue that, hey, I was mandatory complying with the crash investigation. I didn't know we were. It's almost a failure to Miranda kind of similar. Yeah, absolutely. So what we have here is going to be some dead space for a little bit. So we're going to kind of jump ahead to about the 16-minute mark. Let's go to. Okay, so they're about to walk up to the vehicle now.
Yes, sir. So if this is the driver exchange information on it, we'll have all of the information you guys need to go through insurance and all that. All right, all your informations for vehicle 1 and driver 1, vehicle 2, driver 2 is going to be the other party.
He's explaining the civil citation. You have 30 days to comply. Careless driving, he got cited for the accident. And this is the conclusion of the crash civil investigation.
It is a moving violation, so fines now with 163, 4 points will be assessed on your driving record. However, you do have 3 options. They are in the back. It's option 1, 4, and 5. Basically,
So during the civil investigation, would the suspect be handcuffed?
Absent like some type of concern for officer safety or something like that, no, they should be, free to move around. I think because of Tiger's injuries, they probably
Hi.
allowed him
How
the
are
comfort
you?
of
Good. My name is Deputy
sitting in the
Laverne
vehicle.
County Sheriff's Office Traffic DUI
Yes,
unit.
ma'am.
Okay, so Deputy Gideon requests that I respond here
Yes.
to conduct a DUI investigation on you. Just
Okay,
to
so
ensure
that's
that
the
you're fit
pivot.
to operate the motor vehicle
Correct.
at the time of the crash. Okay. With that being
It's
said,
called
he did conduct his
in
investigation
the
so
courtroom
that
the switching of
civil
hats. So you're
aspect
just
of
switching
it
hats
is
from
done,
civil
going into a
investigation to
criminal
a criminal.
aspect. Okay. Can you tell me what happened with the crash?
So now, and I'm just going to pause the video real quick. She has asked him now. Now he's not in custody. So a lot of people would have, well, why didn't they read a Miranda? Miranda only has to be read when you're in custody or a reasonable person would believe they're not free to leave under arrest in custody and they're asking you incriminating questions. At this point, Tiger's not in custody. I know he's sitting in the back of a patrol car and his attorney might be able to artfully argue, he kind of is in custody. I don't know if a judge will buy it, but the reality is, he's not under arrest. He would technically be free to leave absent their decision in a criminal investigation, but they are now in a criminal investigation. And she's telling him, like, tell me what happened. I'm investigating a DUI.
My phone.
Okay.
I changed the radio station, and I hit.
Okay. So you were looking down at your phone and changing yours?
Yes, the radio station.
Is that a reasonable explanation, or is that a problem in itself that he's just admitting he's distracted?
I think that it's a very reasonable explanation because, careless driving is not a crime, right? So distracted driving is bad. Nobody should do it. Texting, radio, but we all know that those things happen every day. So it's a reasonable explanation as to why in one moment you're looking up and you're behind a truck with a trailer, and then in another moment that truck goes to turn and slow down. You're looking down at your phone. You look up, you have a quick second to react, swerve the wheel, Tiger's vehicle ends up on its side. So definitely reasonable.
We're gonna go right over there. I know there's a lot of cars here, but right
He seems
there.
very calm.
Walk on the
He
sidewalk.
does. One of the things I noted in some of the media coverage was that, the arresting officer made comments about him profusely sweating. But I find interesting, you're going to hear she's asking him if he's okay in the sun or in shade.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
it's also in the middle of the day in Florida.
yeah, and she says it. You'll hear it here. She's like, are you okay in the sun? Do you want to get in the shade? And then she's going to go
So
throw
right
it in
over
his face
here,
that he was
right
sweating
in
the
front of
piece.
this
Sure.
marked patrol unit.
And he just got in a
Yes,
wreck.
sir.
Right.
Adrenaline. I mean,
Perfect. Do you
there's
wanna stay in the
always
shade? Is that more
complications
comfortable for you, or are you
in
okay in the
DUI
sun?
investigations when
Okay.
there's a car accident.
So besides,
Because
do you have any
defense
medical
attorneys
conditions that
can
we need to know
rightfully
about?
so argue that maybe they had a concussion, adrenaline. There's so many things that can be present as a result of that
When was your
accident
recent
that
surgery?
could also be indicators of impairment. So,
Last year? Okay. Are you able to like walk, lift your leg with no issues, or do you
I'll
have
have a limp.
you have a limp?
now right now she's and good, effective DUI investigators want to do this properly. Before she moves into field sobriety exercises, she's asking him about his injuries, his ability to perform these exercises, because they want to use your performance on them against you if you perform poorly. And we all know that Tiger has had a history of major injuries, back injuries, leg injuries from previous car accidents, and just as
So
professional.
maybe balancing on one leg for 15 seconds wouldn't be a possibility for him.
It would be, I would suggest, impossible. And to use that as an indicator of impairment would be very ineffective, because if I'm a juror listening to that evidence come in, I'm going to be like, well, the man has a fused ankle. How could you expect him to stand on?
And this is, I mean, she knows who Tiger Woods is at that point, so she knows this, but she would probably ask the same question.
Absolutely. You don't ever want to assume anything in investigation. So that's what she's asking him here.
Ankle's fused.
Okay. So what we're gonna do is, since you do have injuries, I'm gonna have you seated, and we're gonna have you perform seated exercises. Are you okay with that? Okay.
Now,
before
this
we
is
get
very
started,
unique.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable with your shoes, or do you want to remove
I
your
have
shoes?
personally
Yeah, okay.
never
What I'm
seen a
gonna have you
DUI
do is remove your
investigation
glasses
where the
and put it
officer
on top of the
performs
hood
these
and
types
you're
of seated
perfect. You're on top of it.
exercises. These
And then go
exercises
ahead
are
and have a
actually
seat all the way
used
on the push button.
in
And then go ahead
BUI,
and bring
boating
your
under
feet
the
towards
influence
you.
cases, because
All
those
right, perfect.
investigations
Do you feel
oftentimes happen on
comfortable with
boats,
today?
like on the water.
Do you
With
take any
the load,
medication?
Yeah, and there's
I take a
no
few,
room
yes.
for you to
What's
walk
a
and
few?
turn, and you wouldn't be able to stand on one leg with any kind of movement on the water.
Okay.
Wake from another boat.
Sure.
So that's what she's doing here.
And what do you call it?
Okay, did you
He's
take all
asking
of
him
them
right
today?
now if he's
Yeah,
on
and
any
what time?
prescribed
Morning,
medication,
night?
trying to
Morning.
weed
Okay, do you know the
through,
milligrams for
could
each?
there be other reasons for impairment besides alcohol?
Ibuprofen 8.
Now, it seemed like there was a little bit of glitch as he was describing what he was on. Do you think that was done intentionally
Okay.
for
And do you take
for
any
privacy
illegal
reasons?
I
substances?
believe that that's
No.
what they
Smoke
did here.
weed?
They
No.
redacted
Okay,
some
perfect.
portion of the
All right.
answer, whether
So
it
what
was
I'm
the
gonna have you do is
specific
place your hands
medication
at your side.
or dosage. I don't know.
All right.
But
So
that's
what
what
you're gonna
she's
do is
doing
look at
here.
my pen
So
right here. Okay.
this
And
is
with your
called
eyes
the
and your eyes only, you're
HGN
gonna
for
follow them.
short.
Don't move your head. Do you understand?
You got it.
Full
Perfect.
terminology is the horizontal gaze nystagmus.
If your
This
thumbnail doesn't stop
information
the scroll,
is
your
only
video
admissible
is
in court
already dead.
through a
Because
drug
on
recognition
YouTube,
expert. Now, I
no
don't know if
clicks
this
equals
particular
no views.
deputy
That's
is
exactly
a
why we
DRE,
built
as they call it.
Clickly is the
But
fastest
what
way
they're
to create
doing
YouTube
is, and you can't
thumbnails
see
that
it on our body
actually
cam
get
here, is
clicked.
they're moving a pen
Instead of
back and forth,
guessing,
asking you to
Clickly
keep
uses
your head
AI
still.
trained on proven
And
winning thumbnail
when you're
designs.
impaired
Here's
by
how it
alcohol or
works.
drugs,
First, you
depending
paste
on
in your
what,
YouTube
and that's
video.
why you need a drug
Clickly's
recognition
AI
expert to
scans the
testify
video
to
to
this.
understand the content,
Your
emotion, and
eyes will
context. Then you
involuntary,
choose
as
a
they
winning
get to
preset,
the side
modeled after thumbnails that are
of your
already
peripheral,
working for top
they will
creators on
bounce.
YouTube. Upload one
You
photo
can't
of
feel it,
yourself, click
but
generate,
when
and in
you
less
go to the
than
side,
60
the eye
seconds,
that they're
Clickly
noticing
creates
like a
scroll-stopping
bouncing of
thumbnails
the
with your
eyeball.
face automatically placed and
And that's a
styled for
universal.
maximum
That just
clicks. No
Yeah,
design
apparently.
skills,
I'm not an
no
expert in it.
Photoshop, no trial
But
and
yeah,
error.
Yeah, so if
Just
she's not an
proven
expert,
designs powered by AI.
when it goes
And
to
to give
trial, you
even
have to
more
hire an
options, you
expert.
also
A
unlock
prosecutor
well,
would hire an
2,000
expert.
proven
I don't know that
Canva
they can.
thumbnail
I've never seen a
templates,
prosecutor do
fully
that, because those observations, there's no way for somebody to review this and say, oh yeah, I see what she's seeing, because she doesn't capture it right on her body cam. Ordinarily, they're inadmissible without a drug recognition expert. And this is one of those things where every officer does this exercise, even if they're not a DRE, because they're going to see that and say, hey, I don't care how, they're never going to admit this, but I don't care what he does on the rest of these exercises. His eyes bounce it. He's under the influence.
That's interesting. I always thought it was a matter of the temptation to turn your head to follow the pen.
And that's one of the indicators, because when they're doing these exercises, they want your ability to follow instructions. It's not just, did he fall down while he did the walk and turn? Or is he stumbling? Or it's couldn't follow directions. And that's an indicator of impairment. Right? So at least to the state.
Yeah.
Right. Now, circling back to the accident, the man just got in a wreck. His car flipped to the side. He was probably pumped full of adrenaline right now, thinking about all kinds of things. PR, the news. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna, the Masters is in a week. It's probably a living nightmare for him, especially if he's not impaired. And so his mind's probably going a million miles an hour, which, as a defense attorney, I think in a jury trial you could argue.
Yeah, so you've been on both sides of the fence, as prosecutor and defense attorney. That defense, that argument, how compelling is it that, hey, it's adrenaline. This was not impairment, it was adrenaline.
I think it's very compelling under the right circumstances. It's kind of like it's not a one size fits all defense. But when there's an accident, uh, it's always relevant in my opinion, especially when you know you you just wrecked. You climbed out the passenger side. Your car's 100 feet behind you, sitting on its side. I think that it's absolutely fair to say, hey, one little individual, you didn't follow my direction, is easily explainable by
Right.
the circumstances that were.
It's going to become a pattern. That's
Yeah. And so here you're going to actually see, and I haven't read the specific report that she authored, but you're going to see at one point where he doesn't put his hand back down to his side without instruction. And her instructions say, you're going to touch your nose, you're going to put your hand back down to your side. So that's the kind of stuff that they try to weaponize against an accused when they say, you didn't follow my directions. I told him to put his hand back down to his side, and he held his finger to his nose.
how many tests does an officer typically have in the repertoire?
Horizontal gaze nystagmus, walking. Now, mind you, these are the normal ones. He's doing the seated exercises. So the normal ones that most people would encounter are the HGN, which is the pen, walk and turn, the one leg stand, the finger to nose, and I think that's it. There might be one other.
And is that pretty much the same if you're in Martin County where Tiger is, or if you're in Miami-Dade County?
Correct. They have kind of NHTSA standards for these types of things. So these are pretty well-settled field sobriety exercise. People are, they're going to ask you to do the alphabet backwards. That's nonsense. That's not. Occasionally, they'll have you do a portion of the ABCs, like, hey, I want you to recite without singing. That's a huge thing. Follow instructions. The ABCs starting from the letter B and ending at the letter O. And so it's not a tough task, but if you start at A and you're like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you end at Z, they're going to say, okay,
You failed a couple ways share.
When I say the tip of your finger, this is the tip of your finger, okay? It's not gonna
So
be
at the
your
beginning here, I know I was talking about the field sobriety exercises that we normally expect to see. On one instance, he didn't put his hand down right away, and she said, hey, you need to return your hand. I'm not going to remind you again. That's the kind of stuff she's going to probably put in the report and say, he didn't follow my directions. But candidly, though, finger to nose every time. He didn't miss. He didn't hit it.
Yeah, that looked like it went fairly well.
I would honestly say, objectively speaking, Tiger did well on that exercise.
Just like I explained and demonstrated.
Now, this exercise and the subsequent exercise, in my professional opinion, are
Remember to return your
absolutely laughable. These are done in BUI investigations. As a prosecutor, I had a BUI trial, and I had an FWC officer admit on the stand that these exercises are difficult for any. In the moment, that wasn't what I wanted as the prosecutor to be said to the jury, but I mean, how on earth, outside of you just not complying, is, flipping your hands back and forth, any indicator of impairment? Unless you're just incapable of doing it.
And it's so non-intuitive, like
Subjective.
Yeah.
Like, okay, he didn't, you'll hear it here. You need to accelerate. I told you to accelerate. Listen.
When I tell you to begin, you're going to turn
So,
your top hand over and count
She
out
said at the
loud
beginning,
one.
she gives them the instructions, and again, following directions. They love to hammer as an indicator of impairment. So, I want you to start as 1, 2, 1, 2, and I want you to speed up as you go. So you hear her here say, remember, speed up as you go. I mean, I'm sorry. How any juror could ever listen to a prosecutor and say that something he's doing right here is an indicator that he is impaired by drugs or alcohol, to me, is laughable.
Now, we've all watched Law and Order, right? And the police have their job, and the district attorneys have their job, right? Is this police officer trying to make a case by making the test more difficult, or do you think she's actually trying to, really find out, is he impaired or is he not impaired?
I think, honestly, credit where credit is due to the officer for doing the best with what she has. She knows if she is the DUI officer, and most departments and agencies have people that specialize in these things. She knows that because of his injuries, the normal field sobriety exercises, even if they're admissible, nobody could actually rely on to show that he's impaired because he cannot walk normally. You watched him from patrol car to here. He's got a limp. So they're not going to really be able to tell. Hey,
It looks like he has something on his leg.
yeah, he's got a huge, like one of those compression socks, probably for healing and circulation. So she's doing her best by saying, okay, well, we're going to try to get some observational data on his ability to follow instructions. And as ridiculous as I think this exercise is, the next exercise is even more. I don't even know what they call that fist to chest or.
1, 2, 1, 2.
And I got to make a comment here. You couldn't see it because she was holding a piece of paper up in front of her, but he sweat. And on the way to this portion of the investigation, she asks him, "Do you want to be in the shade, or are you okay in the sun?" And we all know Tiger's okay in the sun, right? He plays golf, has a job. But I read that one of the things she noted as her observations of impairment is that he was sweating profusely. Right? You can't have it both ways. You can't say, "Hey, I know it's super hot out. It's Florida, and it doesn't matter if it's March or August. It's hot." But you're sweating a lot. I think you're impaired by cancer out. I mean, he could be nervous. Sure, the adrenaline could be wearing off. So what this exercise does is they're trying, I believe it's trying to follow instructions and kind of spatial awareness, right? So if you're impaired, your spatial awareness may be impacted. He's probably got sweat going into his eyes right now.
Okay, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
It seems like he does these little hiccups and head shakes.
He mentioned a little earlier when she said he was moving his head during the pen test, HGN, to stop moving your head. And he says to her, "I've got the hiccups right now." And you could see it from the time he gets out of the back of the patrol car.
Yeah.
You could see the hiccups there. You could see him doing it. Could be something that happened during the accident, right? His diaphragm got a little, out of whack. But he's got the hiccups.
Make sure you speed up as you go. You can go ahead and stop. Okay. For the last
Seems like a
exercise,
difficult
what I'm
test.
gonna
Look at his
have you-
face. He does.
I mean,
I need to hear the instructions twice.
yeah, I almost want to go back on this video, because when you listen to this, it's like you start your fist against the chest, then you're going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to remember your position. You're going to clap your hands. And okay, so now I'm in space, right? I have no orientation to my body. I have to clap, and then I have to remember where my hands are. And then what they want you to do is get back with no gap, because they want you to do it. It is absolutely absurd, in my opinion, for this exercise or test to be any kind of indicator of impairment. Absolutely absurd.
So it's going to look like this. So your left fist at the center of your chest, and then your right fist directly in front. And you're going to remain in this position until I give you further instructions, okay? When I say begin, you must perform 4 tasks, okay? Your first task is to count out loud from 1 to 4 while you move your fist in a step-like fashion, making contact.
This really seems onerous to me.
Very onerous. And if you pay attention to all the things she's asking him to do, I suppose a prosecutor could argue, like, look, even if we don't care about the spatial awareness, there were a few things we were looking for here, like the clapping, when you're done doing this, and the fact that he couldn't remember those things means he's impaired. And I'm sorry, I'm not sitting on the jury, but as a juror, I'd be like, look, the man just got in a car accident. He knows his reputation is going to be in the tank for a little bit, because everybody's going to assume, even though he's innocent until proven guilty, that, oh, he's probably DUI. And he's probably thinking about a million things right now. And the fact that he didn't clap the way they wanted or put his hands down fast enough.
Do these videos come up, and are they shown at trial? Would this be?
Yeah, absolutely. So unless there's something suppressed, right? If they didn't switch hats, or there was a time that they should have read Miranda and they didn't, then these videos would be admissible.
So I almost think, I mean, we're sitting here as defense attorneys, obviously, right? So we have our own bias, but if I was a juror, I would think, boy, this is really different. I mean, I've never been able to do the electric slide, and I've been at the same look on, Tiger Street. I'm not following what you're telling. It's doing instructions.
Yeah. I got sweat dripping in my eyes. My car is 100 yards away from me on its side. I'm thinking about a million things right now, and I'm staring in the blaring sun, and they're telling me I need to, do some kind of like Simon Says game, clap, count to a certain number, and then, it's just...
Is someone in Tiger's position better off playing along with this and trying to do his best, or should you just say, hey, listen, you know what? Like, I'm out.
It's a tough question because one of the things prosecutors universally argue is that when you don't perform field sobriety exercises or you refuse to do that, the only reason you did that is because you know what they're going to show. So it's a really tough thing. You know, if you feel comfortable doing it and following instructions, and honestly, objectively, I think Tiger does well on these exercises. I think so. He's trying to remember her instructions. And of course, I guarantee you her report is like he has an indicator here for, you know, and see there's a spatial gap.
He's off by a couple
inches, and then he puts his hands down. So,
Okay, go ahead and place your hands behind your back.
and she,
Place them
and she's
behind
going to
your
place.
back. There you go. So at this time, I do believe your normal fast
That's based
is
on
impaired.
the failure of that test or the totality?
So they'll tell you totality of the circumstances. Well, police always put that in the report. Based on the totality of the circumstances, I believe that he was impaired by drugs or alcohol. Now, we know that he had no alcohol in his system and that he refused a urine sample at the jail, which they'll argue consciousness of guilt on. But realistically, what evidence do they have at this stage that he's under the influence, well, not at this stage, after he blows zeros, that he's impaired by drugs or alcohol? Without the urine sample, I don't see how they could prove that. Now, I have heard recently that the prosecutors are trying to obtain his prescription records, which the state databases will have. But again, without urine, how do they prove, or an admission, that it was because remember, you have to be under the influence of that substance to the extent your faculties are impaired. How do they prove that in his body was a controlled substance?
So is this where like his recidivism like plays a part?
It's not admissible. Prior bad acts is what they call it. Prior bad acts are only admissible under very, very limited circumstances, and I don't see how in this situation, under any capacity, that his prior DUI allegations would be admissible. To prove that he was DUI.
Yes.
And then, you know, from here to the end, it's just him under arrest. Now, I objectively, I don't see how I think he performed well on these exercises, if you call them that. I would call them tests, and I'd call them silly tests. The palm pat and the chest thing are absurd. He clapped. He put his hands down. He may not have counted the way she wanted. She's going to argue, and the state's going to argue that means he's impaired. If I'm the defense attorney on his case, I'm standing up before a jury, if it ever got that far, and I'm saying that's not evidence of any impairment.
Yeah, they're taking some things that they collected out of his pockets. They're putting them in a plastic bag now. Do you think that's evidence, or do you think it's just they just take his personal bag? That's just standard routine.
It may be evidence. I know from the luxury of reading, you know, reports and whatnot, that they did find 2 pills in his pocket. I believe those were pain pills, but he was lawfully prescribed them, so he's not going to face any charges for, like,
if you had your wallet and your cell phone like a normal person would that be something the police would take away from you at this point?
Yeah, they would, and it would go into what they call inventory. So it would end up in, you know, for safekeeping, so to speak. He'd get it back. I guarantee you, when he bonded out, they gave him that property back. They may have kept the controlled substances, I'm imagining, as evidence, but they definitely gave him his person.
Do we know what they are?
Now, one of the things to keep in mind for Tiger is the new statute change in Florida, where a refusal is now a criminal offense. So it's a misdemeanor. Refusing a lawful test of your breath or urine can be charged as a criminal offense. So even though it may be hard for them to prove the DUI, right, they may be able to prove the fact that he refused, unless his attorney can come up with some type of creative legal arguments that because there was insufficient basis to arrest him, that everything else maybe should be suppressed.
Well, in some states, refusing to take the breathalyzer test is immediate grounds for losing your license. Is that the case in Florida?
It is. In Florida, when you refuse, your license is suspended for a year. There are ways to get hardships and things like that. There are administrative hearings where you can test that. Honestly, I would expect that his attorney is contesting that suspension and setting it for an administrative hearing. That's just an assumption.
I think someone would Tiger's financial resources would have a hardship argument, you could probably hire a driver.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm sitting in Tiger's shoes, I'm probably being driven around all the time anyway, just for, to avoid these types of situations and whatnot. But at the same time, he's fortunate enough to where even if he doesn't get a hardship license or his license was revoked, that he'd be able to get around.
No, I think we're all good.
For your average person, who doesn't have financial resources and is living paycheck to paycheck in this day and age, battling hardship hearings, hiring private lawyers, private drivers, Ubers, that's something that's probably not financially feasible for everybody.